Some exits don't need an announcement, no closure, no long speeches, just distance, quiet, clean, intentional. And that silence, it speaks louder than any confrontation ever could. Because when a man walks away without noise, what he's really saying is this: I no longer need to explain myself to be at peace. That's not weakness, that's power. The kind most people never earn because they're too busy proving a point instead of protecting their peace. Walking away silently is one of the most disciplined moves a man can make. It means you've studied the pattern, you've given the chances, you've held your standard. And now, without rage, without revenge, without a show, you walk. Not because they didn't matter, but because you finally realized you matter more. And nothing screams self-respect louder than refusal. Refusal to argue, refusal to explain, refusal to lower yourself just to be heard by people who never listened anyway. A Stoic knows that dignity doesn't need permission. You don't owe anyone your energy, your time, or your access, especially when they've mishandled it. Silence isn't passive. It's earned. It's the reward of a man who's done chasing closure from people who benefit from his confusion. He doesn't need to slam doors. He simply locks them. Permanently. Without drama. Without noise. Just gone. Walking away in silence means you've shifted from reaction to resolution. Most people crave the final word. They want the last blow, the dramatic scene, the mic drop. But a Stoic man understands that need is rooted in ego, not strength. True self-respect is quiet. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't need witnesses. It just needs conviction. The kind of inner certainty that makes speaking unnecessary. When you leave silently, you're not trying to make a statement. You are the statement. Your absence is the message. Your distance is the closure, and anyone who needed more explanation than that already proved they weren't listening to who you were becoming. They were only invested in the version of you they could control, predict, or use. But that version no longer exists, and so you leave, not with bitterness but with clarity, not with noise but with finality. This is what most men struggle with. They think staying is strength, that fighting for validation is loyalty. But the Stoic sees the truth. Sometimes staying is self-betrayal. Sometimes silence is the strongest boundary you can draw, not to punish them, but to protect what's left of you. You realize this. Every time you argue for your worth, you teach someone that it's negotiable. But once you leave without explanation, you teach the world, and more importantly, yourself, that your peace is not up for discussion. There's a shift that happens when you stop chasing closure and start choosing peace. You begin to realize that the explanation you keep preparing, they don't deserve it. They didn't value your voice when you were present, so why hand them more of it on your way out? The Stoic understands. Not every ending needs to be wrapped in conversation. Sometimes the cleanest exit is silence, not because you're cold, but because you've finally healed enough to stop negotiating with noise. The man who walks away silently isn't avoiding confrontation. He's rising above it. He's no longer interested in proving a point. He's protecting a standard. He knows that not every relationship ends in flames. Some end in indifference. Quiet recognition that it's no longer aligned, and instead of forcing understanding, he allows separation. That's not apathy. It's mastery. The kind of emotional control most men never touch. You don't need them to agree with your decision. You don't need them to understand why you're done. That understanding is yours alone. And when you carry that inner clarity, you move differently. You stop talking about leaving, and you leave. You don't ask for permission to protect your peace. You just do it. And the silence you leave behind, that silence echoes. It lingers longer than any argument ever could. If your silence has ever been misunderstood, subscribe and hit the bell. Not to explain yourself, but to remind yourself who you are. People will say you changed, that you're distant now, cold, unavailable. But what they're really feeling is the absence of your tolerance. The version of you who stayed too long, gave too much, explained too often, that version no longer picks up the phone. And silence. That silence forces people to sit with the truth they used to ignore. It reflects, it confronts, it stings. Not out of cruelty, but because it's clean. When a stoic man walks away silently, he isn't ghosting, he's closing, without theatrics, without warning. He doesn't slam the door. He removes the access key, locks the gate, and moves forward. He understands something most men miss. Peace is expensive. And once you've paid for it with pain, healing, and discipline, you never let it get cheap again. That kind of man doesn't return to chaos for closure. He doesn't reopen wounds just to say what should have been said. He lets the silence do the talking. Because if they really cared, they would have listened when you were still speaking. The door was open. They chose noise. Now, they get distance. And the beauty of walking away quietly? You stop feeding their story. You leave no trail, no ammunition, no performance to dissect, just silence. The kind that forces others to finally meet the version of you they never expected. The one who no longer needs them. The most powerful man in the room is not the one speaking the loudest. It's the one who knows when not to speak at all. Silence is uncomfortable for those who thrive on attention, reaction, and control. But for the Stoic, silence is sacred. It's the final boundary. It's what you turn to when words have done all they can and still fell short. Because some people don't deserve your voice. They deserve your absence. Walking away without a word isn't weakness. It's a final act of strength. It means you've made peace with not being understood, that you no longer need their version of the story to align with your truth. It means you've closed the chapter without asking them to finish it for you. And that kind of closure? That's real. Because it comes from within. Not from their apology, not from their realization, and definitely not from their permission. You begin to notice something else too. The quieter you become, the clearer things get. Your standards sharpen, your energy feels lighter, your mind unclutters. And the people still in your life? They're there because they earned their place, not because you couldn't walk away. You stop feeling the need to explain every boundary, every shift, every change. You just live them. And that's what walking away silently is really about, not just leaving others behind, but finally standing with yourself. There comes a moment in every man's life when he realizes silence is not the absence of strength, it's the confirmation of it. You've said all you needed to say, you gave the chances, you lowered the volume hoping they'd hear the meaning. But they didn't. And now, you've outgrown the need to be heard by people who were never really listening. So you walk, not with bitterness, not with regret, but with finality. You no longer leave doors half open. You don't hint. You don't hope. You exit completely. Because anything less is self-betrayal. And once you've tasted the kind of peace that comes from honoring your boundaries in silence, you never return to the noise. The man who walks away without a sound doesn't disappear. He simply realigns. He stops watering dead roots. He stops negotiating with chaos. He builds forward, alone if he must. And when they wonder why you're gone, your absence becomes the mirror they refused to face when you were present. That's the power of walking away without a scene. The scene becomes their own silence, their own confusion, their own echo. And you? You're already gone. Building, sharpening, moving. Not in revenge, in rebirth. So now ask yourself, What would your life look like if you stopped announcing your worth and simply left where it's not recognized?